around at what I put in place here. This is a basement install. And as you can see, this woman is standing on her floor. And what we have is down here is a coil, a furnace, copper tubing, which is your line set, a condenser, a cement wall. These are 2x6s or 2x8s, and their floor joists are called. And this right here is a boxing that sits on your cement wall. That's how most homes with basements are constructed. As you can see, we ran the line set to the furnace, to the coil, and through a hole in the boxing because it's made out of wood. And as a note here, we don't ever want to drill a hole into this concrete right here. It'll only cause problems and leaks. So if we go through the wood, we can seal it pretty well, and it's well above ground. It's 2 foot above ground. And then this line set itself goes out of that boxing and connects to the condenser outside. So step 1 for this is to make sure that you put the components in the spot that you want. You've set the condenser, I've set here, there's a furnace, you put the coil on top, and you have a good idea of where this is going because in earlier tutorials you cut this hole and you made a plan for these pipes. Now, excuse me. We want to make sure that once you set your components that the hole is actually drilled in the proper place. And if it's not, well, you're going to have a little bit of trouble, but more than likely you've planned this ahead of time because of tutorials. So we want to unroll the line set in a proper fashion. I described that above in the tutorial. So hopefully you've done that already. And then next, once you get the equipment in place, what I want you to do is we're going to take this condenser and we're going to move it this way, away from the house 6 inches. So just go take this guy and move it 6 inches. Before I go any further, in the bottom of this tutorial is a check sheet, so you can go step by step. And that's actually what I'm reading from. So what I'm telling you is exactly what's on that printout. So you can just take it with you, put it down in the basement or put it in your pocket and do step by step. So the 5th step is to measure the amount of insulated pipe needed to install the outside piping for your line set. Okay, and then we want to push that amount outside of the home plus 6 inches. So I want you to measure from here to the wall, and from the wall the pipe going up and over to here, and then right to the boxing of your home, then add 6 inches. And that measurement should be the amount of pipe that you have to stick outside of the house. So when you unroll the piping in the basement and you got this long piece, you stick it out here, whatever the length of that measurement is, and it'll be just like a piece of straight pipe coming straight out of the house this way. So it'll be just kind of feeding. See if I can draw it. That's not straight there. See if we can't get it to, yeah, just like this, kind of. I want it in the green plane, stay in the green plane. And you'll see it comes out kind of like that. And that's where you want to leave it for now. And remember, it's going to connect to this condenser right here. Okay. Okay. Now, step 6 is to cut that pipe. And we want to cut that pipe 6 inches away from the wall. So from this boxing and out, we want 6-inch stub right here. Okay. Now, once you cut this, we got 2 things to do. We want to remove the exposed insulation that's on this pipe. And we also want to push the insulation that's on this piece back into the home and tie wrap it so that when you braze, you don't burn the insulation. Okay. Now, step number 8 is we're going to start to install the copper fittings. So as you can see, what I did earlier is, let me erase this guy because You're probably done with that by now. All right. What I did earlier is I drew this as 90s and into the condenser. And the reason I did that is because I don't believe that any of you or most of you won't have bending tools. And if you bend the piping and put a kink in it, you'll actually hinder the longevity of your equipment. So we want this pipe to stay basically circles or cylindrical. And the only way to do that if you don't have tubing benders and if it's not like a straight shot is to put 90s in. And you can put up to 3 or 4 90s in these and it won't harm anything. When you start getting up to like 6, 7, 8 90s, then you have to start to do something a little different. But you like using curved 90s. But these are all right. So we're going to start to install the piping right now. And what you need to do is you need to figure what this length of pipe is going to be. And then clean this fitting. And then what this length of pipe is going to be and what this length of pipe is going to be. I usually do it with a straight edge. I just take a straight edge from here to the wall and make a little mark with a pencil. Then I know where 2 of my points are, this point and the point from here to there. That's been the easiest way I found to do it. Now the other thing I want you to remember when you're soldering, because that's what we're getting ready to do right now, is we want all this squirted down with water, and we want rags wrapped around the pipe and around the siding of your home. And remember, this is out 6 inches, so it's a considerable amount, but we still want to be very cognizant of what you're doing around the house. And the same thing with this joint. You have to be really cognizant, point the torch away from the siding of your house, even if it's brick, because the brick will explode if it has water in it. Okay, so just pay attention to that. Okay, now step number 9. Before you solder that last joint to the condenser, and now remember, you soldered this joint, and then you can put the pipe in there, clean it and put the pipe in there, then go back and solder this joint right here, and then clean the pipe and solder this joint going down, and clean the pipe in the fitting, put this in place, clean the pipe in the fitting, put this 90 in place. You can put this tube in and solder it. But now we're to the condenser, and what we're going to do here is not solder it the same as you're soldering everything else. You have to do a couple of things to make sure that it's proper and that it's going to work the right way for you. The first thing that you have to do is put your insulation back on this pipe. Okay, that's the whole piece that you took off earlier. So you clean all this, wipe it down with water, and then take that insulation and push it back up on here and follow it all the way around. And then push it up onto the pipe and tie wrap it right here and leave it like that for now. Then clean the ends and stick the end inside the tube that connects to the condenser. That's step number 9. No, step number 10. There's a valve that are on these condensers. There's 2 of them. One's called a liquid line valve and one's called a suction valve. We need to wrap the suction valve, the large pipe, with a cold, wet rag. It doesn't have to be cold, but it does have to be wet. And this is not optional. If you don't do this, more than likely you'll ruin the valve on the condenser. And it doesn't take much to find a rag, get it wet, and wrap it around this. Once you do that, you can solder this joint. While you're there, you might as well wrap the other rag, the other valve, with a rag, because you're just going to have to be doing that later too. Okay. So now that you've finished soldering that, what we're going to do is step number 11 is we're going to take and we're going to push the condenser back toward the house 6 inches, where it originally was supposed to go. Once you do that, what we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to start to strap this to the house, however way you planned on strapping it. This joint here, wherever it needs support, has to strap to the house. And also at this time, if you can bear with me for a second, we're going to strap the inside portion. See if we can pull it out a little bit and rotate around. Okay, so you can see we're going to also strap the inside. Stop. I'm talking to myself as we go. We're also going to strap the inside of this to this floor joist. So wherever the straps are, you strap that there. And then we're going to strap, this down here, just so that it has support and that you can support it so the pipe doesn't rattle, break, whatever. Okay, and that's step number 11. Now 12 and 13, well 12 was actually, it was step number 12, strapping that. Number 13 is to move the rest of the line set into place and finish the inside job. Okay, so how are we going to go about doing that? What I usually do, and I encourage you to do, is when we're putting this in place, this line set, okay, let's see if I can get, it'll be easier for you to see it if we're on the left hand side of it. Okay, so you run it down and you can see how it curves, and you don't have to cut it, or that should all remain one piece once inside the house unless you have really radical bends. And then what I do is I run this piece here past the coil like 6 inches to a foot, so somewhere in here, and then I cut it. And the reason for that is because then we have to pull the insulation back off of it, and then we're going to tie wrap the insulation again because we have to solder it. But you can always cut it again, so I always leave it just a little bit longer, then try to maneuver it in place and then see what the actual size is. And a lot of times you can just, with that extra 6 inches or foot, you can just put that right into place and you won't have any problems at all. Okay, one thing you have to remember is that before you solder it, there's going to be 2 plugs on the coil. And what we want to do is pull them plugs and listen for a rush of air. They're under pressure. They're probably under 50 pounds of pressure. And they should go psst when you take the cork out of them. And it's just a rubber plug. If it doesn't, you have to remove the coil, take it to the supplier, tell them there's a leak in the coil, and get a new coil. And then while you're there, because you're all ready to go, you check and make sure that that coil still has pressure in it. If you don't do that, you'll have leaks inside your coil. And every year you'll be putting new Freon inside your coil, and it's just a hack job. Okay. Now, same thing happens here. Once you get this in here, we want to put a rag around this where it goes into the box, and we want to solder that. And you'll see there's a tutorial earlier with silver brazing on it. Now, once you have that soldered, what we're going to do is we're going to install the small line set. And all you do with the small line set is you plug it in and you just keep following the large line set outside. It's real easy, real malleable, bends real easy, and tie wraps and make it look nice, and just put it in and then solder it. Solder it here with a wet rag and solder it out at the condenser with a wet rag. The curves will match the already installed line set, the large one. So that's a fairly easy task compared to what you did. We want to cool all the joints and clean them as best as possible. And then you want to cut the tie wraps that are in the insulation and push the insulation up against the condenser outside and the coil on the inside, and just make everything look good. Now if you had to add extra, I put a little piece of pipe here, so say you came up short and then you had to add a little bit of extra pipe, you have to keep track. So write down exactly how much extra pipe, if you did use any extra pipe. That way, because you're going to have to put a little bit of extra Freon on it, so that way you know exactly how much extra Freon, and we'll cover that in a later tutorial. Now that's it. That's all you have to do. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do, but that's how I do most of the line sets that I install. So that's Do-It-Yourself X.